Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy.
The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Hello there, Wolfpack. Well, this was certainly a video which nobody was anticipating. Let's talk about the Twilight Zone classic, Eye of the Beholder. This episode was another noteworthy icon of the franchise, often being branded as one of the most astonishing tales of suspense Rod Serling ever created. Much like the monsters are due on Maple Street and the After Hours, this story is considered an everlasting classic that has withstood the test of time thanks to a combo of brilliant writing, deep ideas, a unique filming style, unnerving mature horror, terrific acting, a nice twist, a serious tone, and a moral that society can still learn from to this very day. While it's not exactly one of my personal favorites, I do respect this episode a lot because it has earned its high praises. This was one of the most memorable journeys the show ever had, and is fondly regarded as a classic of good horror storytelling in general. It was that powerful. So of course, some idiot executive said, "Hey, let's remake that! But worse!" Most appropriate reaction ever, Optimus. This week we're analyzing the 2000s Twilight Zone show's desperate attempt at recapturing the glory days with their modern gimmicks. Since, as we all know, you can always capture lightning in a bottle twice. I know I'm giving my own twist away so soon, but there's no surprise, this remake is terrible. However, we're here to look at why it's so terrible, and see if the hardcore Twilight Zone fans are right about it being as bad as everyone claims. First things first, let's rip this bandage off right now. A huge issue people have with the remake is that it is an exact shot-for-shot carbon clone copy of the original script. Not one thing is changed in this remake's creation, except for it being in color now and with worse actors. That's it. Every line is the same, every action is the same, every scene looks the same, every main idea is the same, every name is the same, and even the moral is the same. This remake is the Gus Van Sant Psycho and Disney's live-action The Lion King of the Twilight Zone. Not one thing is altered. Heck, even Rod Serling is credited for the script's writing in the credits since they stole it from him once he was dead. Or maybe they just wanted an easy scapegoat so they wouldn't receive all the hate. Newsflash, they still did. This episode is a textbook example of the biggest issues with remakes overall. It's the same, so it sucks. This era of the Twilight Zone just stole everything from Rod Serling's original story and tried to milk it for all the money it would inevitably make, despite doing nothing themselves to make it unique.
Shame on you!
So, much like our last remake episode reviews, there will naturally be comparisons between the original and the revised version. I know that seems unfair, but these two are the same plot regardless, so it was bound to happen. But I've actually had some love for the G3 Twilight Zone lately, and started to respect some of their lost treasures a bit more. So maybe it won't be as bad as people say? Welp, that's our cue to find out. Does this episode have any merits allowing it to stand strong on its own and gain a little love from an audience? Or has it suffered from the remake curse and dishonor the memory of the beloved icon we all adore? Well, Dr. Cat is inspecting to give you his diagnosis. This is our wacky review on the infamous Twilight Zone remake, The Eye of the Beholder. So, our episode opens up exactly like the original, at a creepy hospital.
Calling Dr. Howard. Dr. Fine. Dr. Howard.
We then meet our main character, a jaded, depressed hospital patient named Janet Tyler, played by Sports Illustrated model Molly Sims. Miss Tyler is here because she's in desperate need of a corrective surgery that will make her less ugly so she can rejoin the normal elite people who belong in the outside world. However, she has been unable to obtain the right cure for ugliness at every other medical station, meaning that her surgery here in this hospital is the last and final chance to fix her face before something horrible comes her way. You see, this world Janet lives in is run by super Nazis who control the governments of the world and seek to maintain total power over the population by removing the undesirables, like ugly old Janet. Yep, we're going there, Wolfpack. Rod Serling wrote this tale as an FU call-out against Nazi propaganda, which discriminated against minorities and folks who they deemed abnormal. You see, Rod Serling was a Jewish veteran before breaking out in television. While he served during World War II, Rod bared witness to some of the darkest times of our history, which would later influence many of his Twilight Zone morals. He gained an understanding of the dark nature of humanity, and the fictional fascist government we see in this episode is clearly the Nazi regime, with their leader acting as a Hitlerish figure, arguing for this purging of the ugly. In the original, the moral was ultimately a lesson on why labeling people as bad and mistreating them as inferiors was a monstrous thing to do, since deep down we're all equal and should be seen as such. To the reboot's credit, they do seem to understand this, but it's hindered by a lot of negatives. The biggest failure of all is Molly Sims as Janet Tyler. In the original, Janet was a tragic victim who despised her hideous face and was desperate to be beautiful so she wouldn't be hated by normal society. This character grew up in an oppressive land and was convinced she was a freak because the government said so. She was isolated from the rest of the world, since the normal people couldn't even stand the sight of her. So she was left with no one, and she outright questioned why society would cruelly turn its back on her just because she could never fit their standards of beauty. The dual actresses who played Janet in the old version were incredible, since you felt for this tragic reject. But Molly Sims, I'll let E-Rod explain.
And how do I put this lightly? She's fucking horrible!
Like, oh my gosh, Molly Sims is easily one of the worst actresses I have ever seen. And I sat through Kim Kardashian on Disaster Movie.
Oh my god! Hannah Montana's dead!
This chick is atrocious in the role. Her performance is as lifeless as a block of wood. She makes Tommy Wiseau look like Robert Downey Jr. She is that bad. Molly Sims was chosen as Janet since she was a fairly hot model back in the day, which does relate to the big twist for later. But her acting is so weak that it's practically non-existent. This is a massive problem, because Janet Tyler is a very performance-driven role in both dramas. Janet Tyler is a tragic character who people cried for and pity, but Molly Sims never reaches her emotional level of despair. She is so monotone, dull, and uninterested that you can tell she didn't give a crap. We're supposed to be crying for this woman, but you never do because her acting sucks. In this opening scene, Janet has slowly grown crazier thanks to being quarantined for years, and she bursts into a long monologue about how she fears that she can never rejoin the rest of the world and might be isolated forever. But Molly Sims is so terrible that she sounds like she's just trying to remember her lines rather than feeling the meaning behind them. It's so bad.
I used to look up at the clouds a lot. If you stare at them long enough, they become things, you know? Ships, people, anything you want, really.
Lord, she's making Jessica Simpson look better.
Damn it.
Against all odds, the nurses are moved by Janet Tyler's pleas and pity the poor girl. Most unrealistic part of the episode. Janet wants to be cured of her ugliness, since this is her last chance. You see, the government only allows ugly folks limited chances to get the normal surgery, since if all else fails, then they remove them from their perfect utopia. But Janet obviously doesn't want to go, because it's hinted that the ugly creeps get tossed in a ghetto prison to die. Again, this is a life-threatening deal, but Sims acts more annoyed by it than scared. Sadly, Janet and some of the hospital staff dread another failure arriving, but we then get an exact copy of Rod Serling's deep speech from our narrator, the priest from Black Panther.
You have been introduced to Miss Janet Tyler, who lives in a very private world of darkness. A universe whose dimensions are the size, thickness, and length of the bandages that cover her face. In a moment, we'll witness the removal of those bandages, and we'll see what's under them. Keeping in mind, of course, that we're not to be surprised by what we see, because this isn't just a hospital. And this patient, Janet Tyler, patient number 307, is not just a woman, because this happens to be the Twilight Zone.
Anybody care what this guy thinks?
No!
Go back to your bad green screen dimension, Forrest. Oh, but unlike the old version, the remake gives us more establishing shots of the hospital to remind you morons that we're in a hospital.
Ooh, remake!
These shots also demonstrated how powerful the Nazi government is in this world, since they have a logo and propaganda poster everywhere to assert control. This ominous government is pretty good at invoking some 1984 Big Brother style of power, which shows us how influential these fascists are upon the people. You can't take one turn without seeing them somewhere, reminding you to worship their might. It made them so eerie, and explains why nobody at the hospital questions how wrong it is to persecute this ugly chick. However, I think the remake screws some things up with this. Like, look at this hospital. It looks way too nice for being essentially a place where they send the ugly people to get fixed, whether they want to or not. In the original, the hospital looks so dark and bleak, almost like a medieval dungeon. It was so unwelcoming that it was scary to think about just being in there for a routine checkup. The show even implies that it wasn't even a real hospital, but a Nazi experimentation lab. You know, where they ran genetic engineering to alter DNA. It felt like a cold prison and mad scientist lab morphed into one. In the remake, it's just a normal hospital. That's all. There are some government monitors, but they don't stick out that much in the brightly lit Grey's Anatomy setting like they should. By making the hospital look like a normal hospital, it works against the implication that the government is evil, since the old one deliberately left a helpful medic area in crappy conditions to show us how little of a crap they gave towards aiding the undesirables. Why would the bad guys allow those sick degenerates to go to normal world emergency rooms? There's no unsettling worry. The remake's atmosphere is simply not as scary as the original. The visual filming style is a by-the-numbers medical drama, taking away from the fear we should be feeling. Good job, Twilight Zone!
Remake!
Like in the original, the doctors give routine checkups on Janet to make sure she's alright and mentally stable for the surgery, where her doc promises her that the scars will heal, but she remains hopeless since this marks her 11th time at the ugliness cure. If she fails again, then her stay out of death camp card will expire, and she'll be tossed aside by the mega ultra Nazis. In spite of the awful acting from Janet, this leads me to my only praise for the episode. The guy playing the doctor. Not that one. The remake Doctor's actor is by far the only good performance in this. In the original, the guy who played Tyler's doctor was so over-the-top and melodramatic that it kind of took away from the serious tone, at least for me. Sorry guys, but I didn't think the old Doctor's actor was very tame at his role. He was just overacting to the point of cheese overload. The new PC Doctor in the remake is honestly better. The Doctor has grown to care for Janet while she's been confined here, and he genuinely comes across as a guy who seeks to help her. You see, the Doctor is not supposed to get attached to his patients, especially the ugly ones, because the government would see that as treason for caring about an enemy. Yet he does so anyways. He was the token good teammate among a society of villains, so it shows us that even the people who have to live under the cruel government disagree with their final solution. Again, this was still better in the original, mostly because there was a payoff, while the remake only goes for this guy just being her BFF. At least the doc doesn't sugarcoat things, since he admits that this surgery could fail, so she should ready herself for an alternative choice. Basically, the doc says Janet might have to move into a ghetto, a place where the undesirables of society are forced to live at, so they don't have to be around the normal world. Serling really kept it ambiguous if this ugly community was really a separate village
in the middle of nowhere,
or if it was really a death camp where the city secretly wiped out the unwanted. Based upon Janet's acting in the original, she seems to allude that it's a bad place, and hypes up the conflict over her surgery results. However, Molly Sims is such a bad actress that she soils any dread we have for her. Seriously, she acts more inconvenienced that she has to move into a commune to die. In the original, our protagonist is literally crying her eyes out, begging not to go. She's in tears and on the verge of breaking down, possibly considering suicide. Yet Molly Sims does not reach that. Just listen to this crap.
The state will allow you to live comfortably among those of your own kind.
My own kind?
It's a haven for people like you. Now, who knows? You might even like it there.
It's not fair, Doctor. I don't want to live among freaks. I want to live among normal people. Who are you people anyway? And what gives you the right to decide where I live and how I live?
I am just a doctor. Only the state can determine social policy. All we can do is follow the rules that they lay down for us.
But it's not fair, Doctor!
Oh no, please. I can't move to a concentration camp. That would be bad. Moving my stuff is such a hassle.
She's fucking horrible!
This acting just hurts. So it's not visually interesting, it's not new, it's not adding anything, and it has no emotion. Why the heck did the showrunners want to remake this again?
Remake!
I feel so bad for the Doctor because his performance is so good, but he's playing off of a bunch of rocks. This guy is the only positive because he seems like he's trying. and genuinely cares about attempting to make this feces good. Janet is supposed to have these breathtaking scenes where she wants to experience the outside world again, be normal. But Molly Sims doesn't generate that raw emotion. Her emotional scenes are so much weaker in the remake because the people who made this don't understand why it was so special and unique to begin with. Everyone's repeating the classic moments, but they don't comprehend them. It's the equivalent of a parrot repeating things you humans say. It knows how to repeat, but it doesn't know what words mean. That's this episode. It's crap, because it's somebody copying off of someone else's homework. They made it look like the original, but it doesn't feel like the original.
Garbage! From King Garbage of the Garbage Dynasty!
Jeez, I could produce a more original horror story in my litter box. Watch! Hey, look, I wrote a Twilight Zone script. $1 million, please. Janet soon has a panic attack, at least I think she does, forcing the doctor to silence her. But it sucks because, again,
she's fucking horrible!
Please take this off of me. Please take this off of me. Cut her leg.
I'm a loose cannon, I tell you what. Roar. Oh, but just when you think it can't get any worse, we also see the subtlety of the Nazi symbolism is also ruined. In the original, the Empire had a voice projecting all throughout the city. They were a dark, nebulous, evil organization which managed to perfectly win over the mass public, and were run by these cold, calculating leaders who were so passionate about what they were doing and saying. They truly thought their way was in good nature, and they argued how they were saving the world. They were a spiderweb of dominance, capturing everything everywhere, until they soon became the world. On the remake, the government just has all these posters everywhere, which spell out, "We're evil! Do you know we're the bad guys? Obey us!" The producers think we're so stupid that they literally have to spell it out that the government are evil Nazis for us.
Subtle!
You'd have to be a real idiot to not get the point at this rate. Not to mention, this also makes the remake Nazis' rise to prominence harder to believe. Who does this? What moron wouldn't question their protectors of being evil if they have all these clear signs right in their faces? In short, the remake purges all subtlety Rod's masterpiece had by choosing the in-your-face approach, since they think the viewers are too stupid to get the picture. Talking down to your audience like babies is a good way to lose respect, especially since the old series trusted us to think for ourselves. Janet's scenario worries the doctor so much that he's been stuck pondering up to the night shift. And we get his scene where he discusses with a nurse how evil the government is for forcing them to bow down before them and justify condemning innocent people with lives for not being wanted by their politicians. Yeah, symbolic metaphors to the minorities exterminated by the deranged purists. I love how we see that even the people who are normal under this regime even feel threatened by their own government too, and are aware of how horrifying it is to mistreat those who are different. But I loved it more on the original. The Doctor's actor is still trying, but his decent acting is buried underneath all the in-your-face imagery glowing in what's supposed to be a gloomy atmosphere. And yes, I know the twist approaching us is so obvious at this point, but we couldn't have this set in a dark room like on the original. You have to flash the Nazi mottos in every dialogue scene? Subtlety? What's that? Apparently, the Doctor is having a change of heart and now ponders what their government is doing, which could be deep, but the remake symbolism already shows us why the villains are bad, making his heel realization come across as dumber since he never questioned it earlier. But now we get to the second worst character in this. We meet the leader of the Ultra-Nazis, future Hitler. Now, in the original, the government leader was this suave, charismatic, passionate war general who was based off of old Adolf, yet he perfectly mimics the mannerisms of a confident politician. He was so proud of what he's done and claimed he was the true savior of the world that you could definitely see why he rose to power in the first place, and do believe that he could gain more devout loyalists who would value his every command. This guy was a scary man because, like Hitler, he had true influence. The Nazi icon rose to power because he was an inspirational speaker who was so slick that he basically talked his way up to the top and made himself look good. I hate Hitler as much as the next cat does, but we can't deny he was a cunning bastard. The scariest part of the arc was how this corruptor could ride his way up to the top of the UN. While he never really meets our main cast, his power is what's felt all throughout the tale of suspense. He was an underrated, terrifying Twilight Zone monster who comes close to feeling as real as a dictator could get. But on the remake version, he's now an over-the-top supervillain who screams all his lines like a dolt.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
Yeah, once again, the remake screws up by ignoring what made the leader an imposing horror in the original and just reforge him into a Saturday morning cartoon villain. He acts super over the top, he's in your face, he never shuts up, and he's practically dressed like a Star Wars commander. His suave charisma? Gone. Now he's just as obnoxious as everything else.
Tonight I shall talk to you about glorious conformity, about the delight and the ultimate pleasure of our unified society. You recall, of course, that directionless, unproductive, over-sentimentalized era in man's history when it was assumed that dissent was a natural and healthy adjunct to society. You recall that during this period of time, there was a strange, over-sentimentalized concept that it mattered not that people were different.
It pisses me off because the show basically took a guy who was like Darth Vader and turned him into the Cobra Commander. He's a cartoon now. No showmanship, no respect, no terror, no coolness, and no believability. This guy is so evil that he makes me question how he even grew this powerful in the first place. What, everybody heard this guy screaming racist statements and just said, "Duh, let's elect them president"? What a load of bull. I don't take this fool seriously at all. They turned a devious mastermind into an edgelord screaming on his Twitter. I'm just as annoyed at his overacting as I am with Molly Sims' 0% acting. He sucks.
It's pretty much the remake way. Take anything that built up tension or had a little bit of subtlety to it and throw that away and replace it with, in your face, scary!
But, you know it, we've reached Janet's final day. Time for the unmasking. They've performed the final experiment on her, so now it's time to see if she's changed. The doc tries to comfort her one last time, since I'm sure nothing bad will happen. But when they remove her hush bandages, we get to the big twist. Oh yeah, you know the one. This twist was so legendary that it's been talked about and parodied by everyone.
Brian, did you ever see that Twilight Zone episode? You know, where the woman wakes up in the hospital and all the doctors are pigs?
Yeah.
I like that one.
we see that this whole time Janet Tyler was really a normal human woman. Yep, this was the big twist and piss poor reason why everyone's faces were obscured. Janet is a normal human lady, while everyone who's normal is actually a deformed alien freak.
Oh, yes, yes, such delicious irony.
Yes, this was the purpose of Rod's message. To us, Janet is normal, while we fear the hideous aliens who run the world. Yet it demonstrates why letting society deem what's right and wrong is immoral. Janet is a regular human, while the normies are ugly, but in this crazy Twilight Zone world, she is seen as the monster and they aren't. The doctors are freaks, the nurses are freaks, the civilians are freaks, and even the Nazi leader is a freak. But you already knew that one without seeing his face. Now, this twist was a tad predictable in the old version, however it highlights the message of what a ridiculous notion judging others is. It's not right to label a person as something horrible when, in fact, they are a normal human being just like the rest of us. Janet being a regular human forces you to relate with her and perfectly grasp being a victim of profiling. A good message, of course, but the remake still has to whiz all over it on their take. For one thing, the makeup on the monsters is a colossal downgrade. They looked so scary in the original, like if they had their faces mutilated to appear that way. They were nightmare-inducing, and they even gave chase to Janet when she ran away from the hospital. The aliens who ran the globe were grisly. Just look at them.
Look at it! Look at it! Look at it! I want all of you to look at it!
In the remake, everyone looks like a burn victim or just a wrinkly old person. That's all. The remake actually has worse makeup effects than the 1950s show. This is embarrassing. I thought the idea of this remake was to improve upon the original, not make it worse. Where's the imagination? They go from twisted pig-face monsters into burn victims and elderly people. Are you pissing your pants yet, folks?
Ooh, remake!
You know the drill. Janet panics and runs away through the scary hallways, bumping into more creepy freaks, all while the Nazi leader's speech about eradicating the imperfect echoes throughout the building. It's still so lame, especially compared to the original. In the old version, a part of the fear was how the leader was everywhere. Janet could never escape his power. She snapped, and the speech was hurting her even more fractured mindset. Yet in the remake, the actor playing the leader is so overdoing things that it feels like he's trying to start a war and plan to lead it himself. I'm just waiting for the stormtroopers to show up.
A single approach, a single philosophy of governance. That is what we must no longer permit. The ugly to exist within our society. They must be removed.
It's so much lameness. This guy sucks at being haunting. Who wrote this trash? Janet eventually gets caught, where we have the famous final scene, which I won't lie, is the one that got butchered the most. Janet is introduced to another normal-looking human man, who's so ugly, named Walter. He's from a special community where people like them live, safe from the rest of a society that doesn't want them. He came here to collect her in case the final surgery failed, but she happened to bump into him. Boy, that was convenient timing, huh? Walter has orders to have Janet move in with them at the state home for the ugly, since she can no longer live in the normal utopia. Now, in the original, both the actors who played Janet and Walter were very attractive lookers. These people who were deemed hideous had sexy appearances, which most of us would kill for. It highlights how insane this world is by branding them as undesirable when they look so gorgeous. Mostly in our eyes. Did the monsters take over the world and cause this? The main reason why the Twilight Zone show got supermodel Molly Sims to play Janet was based on her physical attractiveness. But honestly, I don't think she's really that hot. Now, don't get me wrong. She's definitely not ugly, but really? This chick was a hot supermodel back then? She looks so plain and ordinary. Molly looks more like a soccer mom, not a beauty queen. And don't say, I'm being shallow, cause I'd like to remind you that back in the 2000s, we had Halle Berry, Shannon Elizabeth, and Lucy Lawless. So I know the Twilight Zone could have gotten plenty of nice hot chicks, many who do have acting talent to play this role. So Molly Sims is neither talented at acting, nor is she the envy of women everywhere in terms of looks. Why did the show get this lame wad again?
The world may never know.
I know. This is meant to be the big lesson that judging others is bad, but there's more behind why I hate this remake's ending than that. This twist had the hero ultimately lose and forced to resign to her fate. Walter has her taken to what could possibly be a nice community, or possibly a death camp where they will be likely executed. It was a grim downer note that shows how cruel this world is for their shallow vices. Quite possibly one of the greatest tearjerkers of the entire series. So, how do they screw it up? Easy. The guy playing Walter is also a horrendously bad actor. If you thought I was mean towards Molly Sims, well, guess what? The guy playing Walter is somehow even worse than her. He too is wooden, stiff, bland, and emotionless. Walter gives this heavy monologue about how true beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But the remake absolutely destroys that endearing speech with this guy's pathetic delivery. He is so bad that it is laughable. This guy is super dull and couldn't care less about what he's saying here. Just listen to these two guys side by side and see who actually cares about what he's talking about.
Why do we have to look like this?
I don't know, Miss Tyler. I really don't know. But you know something? It doesn't matter. There's an old saying, a very, very old saying. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Why are some of us born so ugly?
I don't know, Miss Tyler. I really don't know. But you know something? It doesn't really matter. There's an old saying. Very, very old saying. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Does that remotely sound like a guy who's trying to ease this poor lady's pain? Come on, we gotta stop and get KFC before going to the death camp. I'm acting. Try to give a rat's hat, man. You're an outcast in a horror world, yet you still don't care. It's only a couple of lines, and this dude still couldn't grant us any emotion. I've seen Disney stars give better performances. This guy's acting career is the true ugly I see.
You really wanted to see ugly?
Try, Miss Tyler. Say it over and over in your mind. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
The most emotional ending Rod Serling ever spawned is soiled on thanks to all the actors and showrunners not giving a crap. Mission accomplished, reboot.
Ooh, remake!
So, Janet leaves forever, where she is looked down upon by all the normal aliens. I know this scene is only a few seconds long, but even this is ruined too. Rod Serling actually had the medical staff give off these vague looks where you can't tell if they pitied the ugly couple for being outcasted or if they actually envied them because they got to leave behind their oppressive government to be in a world where their own kind could just be themselves. It lets you think whether or not these people are truly evil or if they're just a different kind of victim, just surviving themselves under this dark Nazi regime, leaving the interpretation up to the viewer. Here, they just say, good luck, have fun at camp, and they exit on their merry way. Wow, feel the magic. And as always, we close this garbage out with Saw Gerrera giving us the last narration.
Now the questions that come to mind. Where is this place and when is it? What kind of world is this where ugliness is the norm and beauty the deviation from that norm? You want an answer? The answer is, it doesn't make any difference. Because the old saying happens to be true. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And this year or 100 years hence, on this planet or wherever there is intelligent life, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Lesson to be learned in the Twilight Zone.
That's terrible!
Couldn't agree more. What the heck happened? I knew this wasn't going to be good, but I didn't expect it to be that pitiful. If I can describe everything wrong with this episode in one word, it would be unnecessary. This was a remake that didn't need to happen. It provides nothing. It is the exact same episode as Rod Serling's vision was. The only difference is that it's now in color and has worse actors. This episode is indeed the Gus Van Sant Psycho and live-action Lion King of Twilight Zone remakes. It's the same dang plot, but with such minimal, shallow changes. It did not need to happen. Nobody wanted a remake of an episode that was already gold to begin with. I don't know why the Twilight Zone or Hollywood in general feels the need to copy and paste their iconic classics like this. Okay, I do know why.
Cha-ching, 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 money, oh money, how I love thee.
But even this reboot series did not need to remake an episode thousands already loved before. There was nothing wrong with it, and these executives had nothing to add in order to make it unique on its own. Rod Serling's writing is genius, but this show wants to take that credit for themselves to make their series look good. I respect the original Eye of the Beholder, but if there's anything I don't respect, it's a copycat. The 2000s Twilight Zone was getting desperate in their attempts to keep an audience, so they resorted to cheap tactics such as their crappy shock value episodes, or stealing from the originals, which only earned them the scorn from everyone. This remake is debatably just as bad as the Maple Street fail bomb was. But you know, at least that piece of barf tried something new. It was still terrible, but it didn't just reprint the script from the old saga. These people had no shame. This was another failure of Hollywood's remakes, which tries to make money off of the fans of the old classic only to crash and burn because they don't understand what made the old version so good in the first place. The actors quote lines said in a better tale, but they don't get what it means. The cameramen film it like the old story, but they don't know why the dark shadows and distorted angles were so powerful to the narrative's tone. The makeup artists try to make the monsters look hideous, but they didn't do it in a way that showed how prejudices literally made the judgmental characters into monsters, both inside and outside. Forrest Whitaker acts like Rod Serling, but he doesn't care about it like Rod Serling did. Nobody who worked on this episode understood why Eye of the Beholder was a timeless gem. It was a timeless moral on how we should not judge people on shallow virtues and cherish everyone as a fellow individual who has the right to live, not force our will upon the world and brand those we hate as unwanted because they don't conform to our thinking. A deep philosophical concept that can still be applied and understood to this very day. Heck, even if you've never seen the old version, on its own, this episode is still abysmal. The acting is bad, rendering all emotions weightless. This world doesn't feel like it's relatable to the younglings anymore. It's not scary, and ultimately, it's a forgettable experience. It's another corporate shill which leeches on an icon, trying to dupe newer viewers into loving it instead. The reboot just wanted the money, fame, and attention to draw in a crowd, yet they did nothing to make it their own and wasted time and resources trying to chase the scraps of the big sister show. The acting is some of the worst I have ever seen. The makeup is cheap, the visuals are lame, the setting is not creepy, the emotional gravitas is not present, the edgelord villain is too laughable to be intimidating, the subtle symbolism is gone, the moral is more in your face to the point of killing the mood, there are no new ideas involved here, and worst of all, it didn't need to happen. The 2000s Twilight Zone could have tried going back to their original content, but chose to recapture an old one because they had nothing. All they did was remind us how superior the black and white tale was, while this one requires some corrective surgery of its own. So, I give this totally modern remake a decayed skull. After all these years, it is still as bad as we remember. I don't recommend it, just see the original. It's ironic how this Twilight Zone tale preaches on and on about how you're an individual who should never conform to the standards of others. Willis being a clone trying to conform to the standards of the first one. This is the reason why people hate remakes. It's a pale imitation trying to copy a better fan favorite, but reveals blatant ignorance at why the classic succeeded in the first place. I guess the network, much like the villain regime, should have seen beyond what the eye could behold. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and next time, I think we should return to some good old-fashioned fun back in the 80s. Sleep well.
Hello, Jordan Peele? My associate and I have some hot stuff you'll want to get your hands on.